Michael Brown was nominated by President Bush to a number of Homeland Security positions and twice confirmed by the Senate.
Earlier this evening, I spoke with Mike Brown, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. He's coordinating disaster relief of a dozen federal agencies and the American Red Cross.
All right, former FEMA Director Michael Brown, thank you so much for joining us.
Michael Brown, former FEMA Director. Thank you, Michael, as always.
This episode of The Michael Brown Show on BCR is brought to you by PS Tracks, the leading system for operations, checks, and logistics management. Visit www.pstracks.com today.
And now, The Michael Brown Show on BCR.
I'd like to welcome everyone to this episode of The Michael Brown Show on BravoCharlieReady.com, a part of the Blue Cell. And I'm really happy today to have someone on the program that he doesn't realize, but he and I met one time when there was a wildfire going on up Left Hand Canyon in Boulder County. And one of his deputies came to my door and knocked on the door and said, "You need to evacuate." So I threw my two St. Bernards in the back of a Wrangler, grabbed my Go Kit, and I drove down to the Greenbrier restaurant, Joe, and I parked there. I was probably the first person to park, and I was fascinated to watch other people slowly come in after having been told to evacuate and watching these fires just spread so quickly up Left Hand Canyon. And people were showing up in SUVs like they had packed their entire house in the SUV. And you just happened to come into that area and walked around, and I saw you, and I just walked over and shook your hand and told you I really appreciated everything that you guys were doing. I had just come back from Washington, D.C., after my tenure as the Undersecretary of Homeland Security. So you and I have met, but I don't think you would never remember that, and I wouldn't expect you to remember that. But anyway, I want to introduce Joe Pelle, who's the Sheriff of Boulder County. Joe, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And here's why I want, first of all, let's talk about you for a second. You have a really storied career, I think, in terms of someone who, it appears to me, at least from your bio, that law enforcement was in your blood from the get-go, from everything that you studied in college and everything. Tell us about your career path.
Yeah, I actually became interested in this career when I was in high school, and I joined the cadet program at the sheriff's office when I was 16 years old. That was a long time ago. As soon as I graduated from high school, I went to college immediately and got a degree in criminal justice. I turned 21 in the police academy. And when I got out, January 1980, I started as a deputy sheriff. And I worked as a deputy sheriff for several years and went to work at the Boulder Police Department for about 20 years. And then in 2002, I ran for sheriff in Boulder County and was elected and took office in January of 2003.
So it really is in your blood. You love what you do.
I do love what I do. It's one of those things, if you can get up every morning and look forward to going to work, that's a blessing, and it's been that way. It's been a great career. I am in my last term, my fifth and final term. When this term's over in a couple of years, I'll be riding off into the sunset.
So what does riding off into the sunset mean to Joe Pelle?
Well, I have grandkids and family here, and I love to play golf. I love to fly fish. We have horses we like to ride. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to have more time to do.
Well, good for you.
And so, and Stephanie, my wife, and I like to go camping, that kind of thing. So
right.
I'm not worried about having something to do.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, here's why I wanted to talk to you today. All of the people in the Blue Cell that participate in our exercise programs, our training programs, are all just like you and I are right now. We're trying to figure out this COVID-19 crisis. How do we deal with it? What do we do? I kind of jokingly said to my business partner this morning, I stopped at a Einstein, well, I shouldn't probably say who it was, but I stopped at a bagel shop to get a bagel, and most of the people behind the counter were wearing masks, but the masks were below their nose. And I so badly wanted to say something about, I'm not a doctor. I have a Juris Doctorate, but I'm not a medical doctor. But your mask really isn't doing any good. So I really wanted to talk to you about, from a law enforcement perspective, in this crisis that we're all dealing with. We have these stay-at-home orders. We have all these different public health orders. From a law enforcement perspective, how do you deal with it, just in terms of all of your deputies, all of your support personnel? I know you and I have had a conversation today about with your IT person who's also working remotely. How do you deal with all of that and keep the department together?
Yeah, I tell you, the first few weeks were crazy because we were literally changing the way we do business. And as a sheriff, not only do I have first responders that I'm concerned about, but I have a jail,
Yeah.
500 bed long-term care facility, if you will. And if illness gets in there, if a virus gets in the jail, could be catastrophic. So when we realized this was on its way and we were going to be susceptible, we had to start making a lot of changes in a hurry. And that involved everything from working with our chief judge and district attorney to reducing the number of inmates in our jail, to getting PPE for our staff, to buying the right kind of trying to buy the right kind of personal protective gear.
Right.
We couldn't get it for a while. And it also involved trying to reduce the workforce in our buildings. We have several different buildings. We have a headquarters building, a jail building, communications and emergency operations, and then we have substations in several of the small towns. So we wanted to reduce the amount of contact in those buildings. We were fortunate in that we had just about everybody in our organization that needs a computer has a laptop. We were able to deploy people out to their homes rather than in the building.
Right.
Change business practices at our front counter, suspend fingerprinting for permits. The list goes on and on and on. Usually in a crisis, a wildfire or a flood, we're just scrambling to, order equipment, helicopters and slurry bombers and hotshot teams and bulldozers and whatever. And this was like a slow boil, where we knew this tsunami was coming, but we had weeks to try to prepare for it. But every decision has a collateral consequence.
Sure.
And impacts something else. And so it's been a tremendous learning experience.
And think about, I love that example of, you have a natural disaster. And so, an EOC goes up into operation. People are shoulder to shoulder. I mean, coming and going and talking and communicating and yelling across a table, I need this or get that done. And now, if that happens today, you have to try to figure out a way to do that remotely. Or if you have to stand up the EOC, you have to do that with a limited number of people to keep them safe.
Yeah, and Michael, we actually stood our EOC up when this started, and they're working as the Emergency Operations Center for public health. So public health is essentially acting as the operations chief in this issue.
All right.
And our EOC is supporting everything else, logistics. In particular, logistics is a big issue. The long-term health care facilities in Boulder County, they started running out of PPE early. And so the effort to get masks and gowns and gloves and that was taken on by our Emergency Operations Center. So they've been up and running a while, but we're only staffing it with a core number of people. There's about 4 or 5 people that actually come in the building. Everybody else, all those emergency support functions, they're all working remotely.
That's fascinating. That's the kind of thing that I'd love to come and see, but obviously you can't do that in a situation like this. But I think for people to hear that you're able to make that work is probably a good confidence builder for other people that, are struggling, particularly a small county where they don't have the resources that you have, which leads to my next question. and that is I've read, and so maybe I don't have all the facts right. So let me just throw this out generically. All of these counties all across the country are beginning to suffer revenue shortfalls because people aren't spending money, stores are closed down, everything. Has that impacted you?
It will. So the first impact is on municipalities who their budget, their finances are reliant completely on sales tax.
Right.
So the first furloughs we're seeing are on cities, furloughs and layoffs, because they're suffering an immediate revenue impact. Counties in Colorado are funded by property tax. And so the impact on county budgets will take longer to actually get to us. And who knows, there may be some recovery by that point. Right now.
No, go ahead.
So the immediate impact for me, I was able to get a sales tax issue passed in Boulder County, a 5-year sales tax to build a new alternative sentence facility and remodel our jail. And we just started collecting taxes January of this year, and it was doing very well. And all of a sudden, it looks like we're probably going to lose a year's worth of revenue,
right?
Which will profoundly impact that project.
So the question, as you were talking about the municipalities and the furloughs and layoffs there, I don't know how much that's affected law enforcement, but has that changed? I mean, when I think about, I lived in Boulder County for, 25 years. And when I think about the diversity, you've got, the city of Boulder, you've got Longmont, then you have all of the little towns like Lyons and Ward and everything. So as local municipalities begin to suffer revenue losses, if they have to start furloughing law enforcement, then do you backfill some of that, or does that increase your responsibility? What happens there?
Well, we're always available to help municipal departments in a mutual aid sort of way. We're doing that right now. Longmont had a chase involving a fatality with a state trooper. Our team is investigating that because someone died in another city with law enforcement involvement. I mean, those things happen all the time. So yeah, absolutely. If someone sees a shortage and there's a critical incident, or that they need help with one thing or another, the sheriff's office is going to help out. Hopefully we won't see peace officers furloughed. I know some of the cities, I think Boulder just went into a hiring freeze. So the impact on their staffing may be more long-term in regards to not being able to hire replacements for people that are leaving or retiring or whatever. So I don't think there's going to be an immediate impact on police staffing. I think long-term there could be some impact.
Okay. I want to ask the next question, and what I'm about to say, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your skirt, but you have a very good reputation as a really strong leader and as a good manager. How do you, or what advice would you give to other sheriff departments, or for that matter, emergency managers or anybody else? How do you lead and manage when you've got everybody dispersed? You're doing things differently suddenly. To your point, which I think was excellent, this isn't like a sudden bam, you got a wildfire. This was a slow moving storm that you saw coming. What advice do you give to other people?
This has been very difficult because I'm a people person.
Right.
I'm sort of a hands-on, slap on the back, encourage people. The thing that's paid off for us in this instance is we have an outstanding team that we've built over the years. When I became sheriff, we didn't have an emergency operations center. We didn't have an EOC. We didn't have emergency support functions. All this was brought on over the course of the last 15 or 20 years, and put in place, and we've hired some outstanding leaders, and they know our core values. They understand our mission, our vision. They understand our values, and they are fully enabled and fully supported to work, to act, to make decisions. And so that's been great, because I don't need to be involved in all those. I don't need to be in the weeds on, whether or how we fingerprint or when we open or what. I have really good people taking care of that. Now, what we have now that we didn't have back in the day is this technology that allows us to all check in every day at 1:00. And to all be on this video conference, and to look at each other in the eye, and understand what's happening in the different divisions. The sheriff's office is, well, compared to your experience in the federal government, we're very small, but we're a pretty large organization, and we're really diverse. We have a jail, emergency 911, patrol, detectives, then all the court services. There's just a lot going on. I just have people I love and trust running every one of those responsibilities, and then we check in every day.
I think that's a testament to your leadership. I've got one last question. I know places like Harris County, Texas, for example, they've instituted some what I would call, and these are my words, so I'm not attributing these words to you, but in my opinion are probably fairly draconian measures. And the county judge, which is kind of their county commissioners in Texas, have turned to law enforcement to really strictly enforce these. And that kind of strikes me as maybe the wrong way to do it. That maybe a better way to do it is through cooperation and education, and, kind of taking your leadership style and having your deputies and your officers do that when they see someone violating a public health order. How do you approach that kind of issue?
So our first directive in regards to public health orders was to educate and encourage people to follow the rules. We have not written a citation since this started for violation of a public health order. The other directive, though, or the other decision we've made, is if we have a business that's operating openly in defiance of a public health order, after a written warning, a letter, we would cite that business. And what I'm talking about is not a lack of understanding, but an open act of defiance.
Sure.
And so that's sort of where we draw the line.
Yeah.
But we haven't had to do that.
Well, I think that again, I think that's a testament to probably how the interaction goes between that business owner and your deputies. That probably accounts for a lot of that.
Yeah, and not just businesses, but pick up basketball games in the park.
Right.
Whatever it happens to be. There's been a lot of community engagement as a result of this, but we haven't had to take any enforcement action.
Good for you. Well, I'm glad to hear that on your part, and I'm glad to hear that on the citizens of Boulder County's part also. Joe, I want to thank you for your time. I know you're busy. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's actually good to see you. I haven't seen you in like 20 years or something, but it really is good to talk to you again.
Thank you very much, and good luck with everything.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll have this posted up on BravoCharlieReady.com. All of you that are members of the Blue Cell, be sure and check out the BlueCell.com. And Joe, I'll sign off and say thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Right.
The Blue Cell and the Michael Brown Show on BCR thank the following advertisers and collaborators: